Well, this is in response to, well, Dan primarily, but anyone else that looks at this wants to watch it. Um, he asked for my thoughts and opinions on Job, the book and the man. And in case anyone is watching this that does not know, that is a topic, a person that biblically I spent a lot of time over the course of my life reflecting upon for many reasons. Even before, well, once again, for those of you who don't know, I have struggled with chronic pain in the form of migraines, primarily, and a bunch of other nonsense that I won't get into, since I was 15. Um, Before that, I was shy, I don't know, beyond, cripplingly, at any rate. I won't labor that point. And, um, and through all of that, until very recently, I had no sense of self esteem or worth, and frankly, I still fight depression, sometimes on a daily basis. I have tried to commit suicide. Um, I would have succeeded one case if not for what I consider divine intervention. And at this point in my life right now, I'm going through a divorce. So, um, obviously, there are other beautiful landmarks along that road that has been my life. But even in that brief synopsis, it's been fraught with difficulties, and the only other thing that has followed me for that far, I would say, in like force, would be my faith. I was brought up in a Christian household, and the church that I attended and grew up in, I was the fourth generation of my family to attend that church. And when I brought my kids there, that made fifth generation. 5 generations of our family had walked through those doors and attended church there, and I think that's cool. You know, I realize long-term membership of churches isn't the hip thing if it ever was, but regardless, my faith has been something that's been with me for the same portion as a lot of difficulties. And I can't stress the point hard enough that if it hadn't been for my faith and such, I never would have made it this far. Um, and to that end, um, my thoughts on Job. Now, I'm going to assume anyone that is watching this is at least familiar with the book of Job or the main character. If not, Google Job, book of the Bible. Read it. It's not that long. It shouldn't take you forever. Um, Even if you're not religious, go ahead, read it. It's an interesting story about faithfulness, hope, and why some questions don't get answered. I guess it's a lot of things. Anyway, my thoughts personally. Uh, I know it's easy to look at it and say that Job had a blind faith, a faith that he just said that perhaps maybe he was just ignorant. There was no actual piety in him. You could say that maybe he was just too stupid to know better, and thusly he clung to that until the karmic wheel spun back around, if you will. And I mean, and sure, you can look at the account and say that that's one way of looking at it. But I think the other thing is that people look at the story and they see the plight of Job and they wonder why God does good thing or bad things to good people. why did God, whom he praises earlier, when talking to Satan, saying, Job's great. He's, there's no one like him out there. And, and Satan's, quip is that, you're great to him. You've given him everything. If you take it away, he won't. And right there's a first point. There's a fundamental difference in the perception of the situation. Now, from Satan's perspective, which will always be the worldly, secular perspective in these sort of circumstances, Satan looks at it and says, he is only faithful because you've only ever given him wonderful things. Now, what Satan and, looks at that, his statement on that, he sees it as, the blessings causing Job's faithfulness, his reaction. Whereas to God's sensibilities and perceptions, Job's always been faithful, and these are all rewards to Job's faithfulness. The faithfulness preceded these gifts, preceded this wealth, preceded this fortune, preceded all the things that God had blessed Job with. And so Satan, not having the perspective, not having, having all of the context that God has, or we have, by looking at this story, said, naturally, very selfishly, humanly, if you will, he said, yeah, he only loves you because you love him. And God says, you want to bet? And yeah, you can say that's capricious, you can say that's mean, you can say that is the act of a spiteful God. Or you can say that is a parent trusting in their child, knowing that they have the ability to fly, and giving them that push out of the nest, and watching them soar on wings of faith. Now, Job didn't know the arena he was on, as far as we know, until Judgment Day, or whenever it is that he stands face to face with his Creator. He might not even know what was at stake. It doesn't say that God explains anything to Job. So, by all means, Job could have, lived the rest of his life with it, his livelihood restored, lived happily ever after, as they will, and, aside from being answered in a whirlwind, he never really thought more of it. He does have the distinction of getting a reply from God. Now, talk about that, something about God's reply, I suppose. The critic, the skeptic, and the analytical will look at the text and see that after those 4 chapters or whatever I think it is of God saying all of these things, do you know all these things, mentioning things like the behemoth and the leviathan, and and all, knowing the thoughts of all these wild creations, the measurements of the universe, things like that. But he never answers Job's question, which was at the very beginning, why? Why are you doing this? Job doesn't find out. Job doesn't get the cards revealed. Job doesn't get the answers that we do reading this text. Job, as far as we know, only ever gets a very extensive soliloquy and the reiterance of I'm God, the great omnipotent being above all others. Why do you have any place to ask? And it's still and I guess Job also had the choice at that point to say, well, screw you, God. You know, all of that, and the least you could answer me is why. You're the creator of all of these things, this being above all beings. The least you could do is answer why. And the simple matter is, we don't need to know. And with complete knowledge, there is no faith. And with complete knowledge comes complacency. If it always happens reliably and provably, eventually we take it for granted. Even God. So, it's very human to look at that and see, where all that frustration would be with God. And in the end, for his faithfulness, Job is rewarded. Everything's restored. He gets all of his camels, all the livestock he lost, family, estranged friendships, all of that restored. With interest, if you will. And what do I say? Well, I get that. I feel at times in my life, like Job. I've never had, sores and itches so bad that I'm breaking pots to scrape my, to satisfy the itching and things like that. But I've been low. I've been, physically, emotionally, and spiritually in pain at points in my life. And I know that, that those points are relative and those points are transitory. This will all pass. Even if it is when my life ends, these things, none of this suffering is eternal. And so what the story of Job and my life really leave me asking is, why aren't I mad? Why, when I've had to abandon more career choices than most people consider, I'm a man who, well, I was never a man that thrived on my independence because I was never an adult when I had any independence. And even as an adult, I have not had that much independence due to my physical limitations from my health. And I've just, I have seen so much, not in the world around me per se. I haven't lost family. I haven't alienated friends in the way that other people have and suffered in that way. And because I've been kind of a prude and a very picky person about my dating life, I don't know some of those points of heartache. I've never had those kind of, I've not had a bunch of relationships. I've only had very few. So I don't know the pain of multiple heartaches and the scars that causes. But I've had to give up on a lot of dreams and a lot of hope and sacrifice my ambition to keep my sanity. And, I had a little boy born with a potentially fatal heart defect. And even in that, all I saw was a circumstance for faith. There's another avenue for God to show his faithfulness. And it was not going to be a tragedy. And I know for my mother in particular, she was very worried about how exactly my faith and my sanity would hold up if everything wasn't okay with Eli. And that's the weird thing about faith. Once you dive into it and you live in it and you swim in it, in a way no doubt that Job did. When it's a part of your life, when you see God's blessings every day, everywhere you look around you, your faith changes. And it stops being something that people talk about and something that people think about and something that people write about. And your faith becomes something real. Because you see God's gifts and faithfulness in your life, and you realize that the good things in your life are there because any good parent wants their child to have good things. And the things that we look at in our life and say, these things are horrible, these are bad things. Maybe they are. But adjustment, correction, discipline always is painful. There's just no two ways around it. Everything must be broken before it can yield its true fruits. The ground must be plowed and tilled for the seed to take and truly grow. Iron must be, or metal of any kind, must be put through a crucible. All the dross burned away, all the impurities removed, so that it can be pure and strong. And when we stop looking at our lives in the terms of good things and bad things, and we start looking at them being blessings and challenges, and in either case, they are gifts from the Lord. If they are blessings, then they are gifts to us, to spread, never to keep for ourselves, always to spread. If a blessing doesn't seem to go beyond you, question the nature of that blessing. And with challenges, every challenge the Lord gives you is an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to trust Him, and even if we think no one's looking, an opportunity to show this world what faith can do, what love can do, what we can overcome when we look at what we see in the world as all being from Him. I could wax on a bit more, but I think I've said everything that there is to say, really. I'm sorry that this ended up being so long. I was really trying to keep it shorter, but now we're approaching 20 minutes. I would like to say thank you for anyone who has paid attention this long. If this was in any way a blessing and you feel that there's something more you would like to hear me talk about, get a hold of me. Anyone who knows me listening to this knows how to. Anyone else, use the internet. It'll be an adventure. Find me. I don't know. Regardless, I pray that this video be blessed and that you are blessed for watching it, wherever you may be. Because I know that I've been blessed for making it. So, God be with you, and I guess that's all.